it's dangerous. They are presently testing. The Environmental Protection Agency just the other day went to the Gulf, tested 3,000 parts per billion in the atmosphere. Now, even if the atmosphere weakens the content of that, by the time it reaches the land, it's still far above anything that the Environmental Protection Agency would ever.
Well, let me give you what the EPA. Let me give you what the EPA says and what the Associated Press is saying. Take precautions to move out of the area if impacted by oil spills, says environmental chemist. Toxins are at 200 times normal levels along the coast. Now, Lindsey, I want to get into the new info before we go to these calls, because we got a bunch of calls we've got to get to. Give us any of the new intel or anything else your source told you or anything else you want to discuss.
Well, first of all, this radio show that I was just on yesterday, unbelievable. The pipe in the Gulf of Mexico, I think, is very significant in that it has eroded already 1 inch of its thickness because of the abrasives coming out, and there will be no pipe there as of 3 to 4 months from now, whenever they say they could plant a nuclear device. And with all of these other gushers that are coming out at distances up to 20 miles, Alex, I think we have got a preposterous, epic proportion disaster here, such as the United States of America and maybe the whole world has never experienced before. And again,
well, I'm sure Obama will give us a carbon tax that we pay Al Gore. That will fix it. What do you think of Obama pushing a carbon tax as the supposed solution?
Well, I have been told by some very reliable sources, you know I have some of them, that the elite positively will use this disaster, even though it's an accident. They will use it to accomplish their 2010 timeline. People, please, I beg of you, get my documentary. We just prepared it a few days ago. Would you please call this number? The number is 888-799-6111, or go on the web to prophecyclub.com, prophecyclub.com, or the toll-free number where the operator is standing by right now, 888-799-6111. The entire story of what the elite plan to do with this, a documentary I just prepared with everything I'm giving here, even the other night on Coast to Coast. I had 2 hours. I only covered maybe half of my materials.
No, I understand. There's a lot of info, and we're going to give people that phone number and website again one more time. But specifically, though, from all of your sources and the radio interviews you're doing, because you told me during a break, Lindsey, the good news is you have not seen any proof that the military is preparing for a forced evacuation of tens of millions of people on the Gulf Coast.
I've talked with a number of people in Florida and the Gulf Coast, and I've asked every one of them the same question. Do you see any evidence of a forced evacuation? The talk show host on yesterday, along with the callers, and there were an entire hour of full lines. Every single one of them said, we have seen no evidence whatsoever so far, or even heard any evidence of a forced evacuation.
Okay, listen, we're going to go 20 minutes of overdrive. That'll be at Infowars.com on the audio streams, and for PrisonPlanet.tv viewers, it won't be on the AM and FM. We've only got about 15 minutes left. Right before the show officially ends in 15 minutes, we'll give out that number and website one more time. But speaking of callers, let's get to them. Mark in Texas, thanks for holding. You're on the air with Lindsey Williams. Go ahead.
Hey, thank you. Couple questions, and then I wanted to see if the people or Lindsey had heard you speak of, Alex, well, your son talking about himself reading the Bible, how that might be a help to other people get a hold of some things and how they deal with stuff, and that Hebrews 9 seemed to be a key to understanding the rest of the Bible. I read recently, like a family member who dies and he being crucified, I don't think he'd leave without leaving us some detailed instructions.
No, I hear you, Mark, and I appreciate your call. We just got questions for Lindsey Williams here. Andrew in Ohio. Andrew, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hi, Alex. Thank you for taking my call. I've been researching this for several weeks now, and the Blackstone Group owns a company that makes Core Exit, which is far, far more toxic it's a dispersant that they are putting like 1 million gallons or so, mixing it with the oil. And they may say that these toxic chemicals are coming out of the well, but they're the ones that are adding it to the Gulf. And the crop.
Well, you know, that's a good point. Normally, we don't see people getting this sick from an oil spill. There's different variants of crude oil, so it varies from type to type, strata to strata, region to region. But they are pumping all these admittedly deadly poison dispersants in, so it's a case of the cure being worse than the disease. Go ahead.
Yes, Alex, let me answer his question about Corexit. Last week on your program, I had so much material, I never even got to this subject. I'm so glad the caller called in about it. Scientists believe that BP is dumping millions of gallons of Corexit 9500, a chemical dispersion agent, under the Gulf of Mexico waters to hide the full extent of the leak, now estimated to be 2.9 gallons a day. Well, as you know what Matt Simmons said, much more than that. All right, Corexit 9500 is a solvent 4 times more toxic than oil. The agent, scientists believe, has a 2.61 ppm toxicity level, and when mixed with the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, its molecules will be able to phase transition. The transition involves the change of a liquid into a gaseous state, which can be absorbed by clouds. The gas will then be released as toxic rain, leading to unimaginable environmental catastrophe, destroying all life forms in the bottom of the evolution chart in the Gulf of Mexico. This is drastic, but I haven't even had time to give it because
and then that'll cause red tides. And that's why they're reporting these big, giant toxic plumes under the surface as well, not just coming out of the other fissures. So we'll continue to analyze this. But just remember, they're gearing up for war with Iran while we're talking about this. And the bankers are setting up their world government right now. Boy, this is very convenient timing for them.
Alex, keep in mind that my informant, now, the 87-year-old gentleman told me a year and a half ago that they did not want war with Iran for 2 years. That was a year and a half ago. Alex, we've only got 6 months, and they have war planned. You are going to see this escalate now, and they will use this Gulf of Mexico disaster to fit into all of their other plans in order to fulfill that 2012 timeline.
All right, well, that looks like what it's shaping up for. Anything else, Andrew?
Sir, it is possible to plug the oil well by putting a pig down the shaft and using thermite to weld the plug at the deep farthest end.
Yeah, but how do you put a pig, and for those that don't know, that's one of these little robot systems, how do you have it go into a crushed wellhead, and when it's got all that pressure coming out of it? But yes, they could run a robot up in it and then have it seal it, but how do you do that when you've got all this oil and chemicals gushing around it? Lindsey Williams.
Well, the pipe is already perforated. They know because of these plumes that are coming up as much as 20 miles away, which the AA now is admitting to, and they wouldn't admit to before. There's no way you can stop this because all you do is just open up that pipe even further down the line somewhere, and you still get the plumes out at a distance.
All right, I appreciate your call. Anything else, Andrew? All right, I want to hear more about that system. By the way, this is up on prisonplanet.com right now, and of course that deals with the fact that the head of BP, actually have the article here in front of me. Let me pull it back up because I can't find it now. Oh, here it is. BP aware of cracks in oil well 2 months before explosion. Former BP chairman and current BP CEO both dumped stocks in weeks before disaster. BP was aware of cracks appearing in the well as far back as February, right around the time Goldman Sachs and BP chairman Tony Hayward were busy dumping their stock in the company on the eve of the explosion that led to the oil spill, according to information uncovered by congressional investigators. The Mining and Mineral Service Agency released documents to Bloomberg indicating that BP was trying to seal cracks in the well almost 40 miles, 64 kilometers off the Louisiana coast. This is big news up on PrisonPlanet.com. This is confirmed. Bloomberg. The fissures, which BP began to attempt to fix in February 13th, could have played a role in the disaster, though this is a question still being explored by investigators. But that would show where the plumes are coming from. And it just continues. Very important piece of intel. More of your phone calls straight ahead for Lindsey Williams. We'll be right back. Stay with us.